Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Ellen Nicholas, and I'm bringing you another episode of Becoming the Greatest Physical Lover. Today, we're talking about creative imagination. The human being is basically a person, a being that enjoys variety. And in our society, we have limited our variety in sexual engagements because people get pregnant easily, and then we have to figure out whose kids are they. So we have taken our sexual appetite, which is extremely important, and we've localized it into monogamy. Now, I don't have anything against monogamy, but I'm just letting you know that sex and our desire for food are both regulated, influenced, or originate in the limbic area of the brain. And just like you would not want the same food every day for the rest of your life, you would get bored with it. You would want something else. You don't want to have the same sexual encounter for the rest of your life. You could love that person, respect them, desire them, want them, and would like very much to be with them. But if every single time you made love, you did exactly the same thing, so a couple of kisses, a little bit of tit action, and then, a little rubbing done, it doesn't matter. If the sex is predictable, it's boring. And as soon as foreplay is boring, then it's not as much fun. Does it surprise anyone that 50% of marriages end up in divorce? People think that they're going to ride on the initial passion and interest and flame that they created in the beginning of the relationship. Well, just by the fact that it was new, that's why it was so exciting. So I'm not saying that you have to do anything too outlandish, but you have to remember that foreplay is supposed to be fun. It's playtime for adults. And if you want your sex life to always have an element of fun to it, then you have to make sure that you use your creative imagination when enjoying each other. So that's why they call it foreplay. Now, one of the ways to make it a little bit more fun is with fantasy. Of course, I'm not talking about people who are just new to dating one another, that this is their beginning of their relationship, that you need fantasy. No, you need realism in that beginning because you want the other person to truly know who you are. I'm talking about the relationship that's been in the works for a few years, and they're married and they have a relationship that they trust each other implicitly. And so they just want to add some fun and creativity to their foreplay. Now, sometimes that creativity takes place in different positions, other times different rooms, other times different locations. Some of the greatest sex has taken place in outlandish places that one would never, ever imagine to make love. Maybe on a golf course, on the desk of a CEO of a major corporation, in an elevator, on a beach. There's just so many different places. But those are kind of leaving you out there for possibly getting arrested. So you really want to find where and when you can grab the opportunity. And that's another thing. That's the conversation that needs to take place. You have to keep the lines of communication open. Even if you're not going to actually work on the making the fantasy happen, just the idea of it is a lot of fun and can really get some juices flowing. And that's really what you want. You want to keep that spark of passion alive in the relationship, no matter how long that relationship is. You want to play with your lover. You want to enjoy their company. You want to titillate their imagination, titillate their mind, and leave them wanting for more. So you do that with creative play. You can do that with toys. You can do that with different sexual positions. You can do that in different locations. You can do that with costumes and with fantasy. I think fantasy is an excellent idea you put a costume on and it actually helps you to become the character. So whether it's student teacher or doctor nurse or doctor patient, whatever, slave girl and pasha, whatever the fantasy is, the first thing you want to do is you want to talk about it with your lover and say, this, I think this would be fun. I actually have a costume for this. And then if your lover likes that idea, you set up the time and the place, and you agree to both come there with an open mind and with your creative imagination fully open and fully ready to just take the scene to a whole different level. So creativity is very, very, very important for keeping our sex lives interesting. And especially if you are with a person for a good amount of time, you absolutely don't want to neglect the relationship. You don't want it to become same dick, different day. You don't want it to be, there it is again. You just want to be with the person and titillate their mind. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Orgasm starts in the mind. If the mind is excited, there's a good chance the body will get excited behind it. And if the mind is bored to tears because basically what you're doing is the same thing you've always done, then it's going to get a little boring. And foreplay is not supposed to be boring. Foreplay is supposed to be exciting and fun and titillating and interesting and leaving you with anticipation, almost breathless, because you just don't know what's going to happen next. Don't worry that you don't have the lines. Don't worry about anything. Put the costume on and take it one step at a time. It could be influenced by a movie that you've seen. It could be influenced by a play or a book, but there are lots of influences out there. And if you want to be open and willing to try different things, that will keep a spark in the relationship. It's such an important thing to do. Anyway, this is your host, Ellen Nicholas, sensuality consultant for a long, long, long time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. Hope to see you again next Wednesday, same time, same station. We're going to have another episode of Becoming the Greatest Physical Lover. Join me, bring friends, ask questions. It's a great time to explore, talk about, and enliven the discussion on sensual and sexual pleasure as a living art, because it truly is a living art. If you are embarrassed about your sexuality, if you're ashamed about your sexuality, these are things that are going to have to be looked at, because we are sexual beings. Without sex, life does not continue. And the thing that makes it particularly wonderful for human beings is that we have erogenous zones from the top of our head to the soles of our feet. And the most important thing is we have a creative imagination. We don't have to do it the same way all the time, the same things all the time. We can do different things. And just in that, fire all new synapses in our brain and make our sex life the greatest adventure of all. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next Wednesday. Keep doing your Kegel exercises to keep everything working on the inside really, really well. And thank you again for joining me tonight. Namaste.